I made so much eggplant. I just had to, and here's why. Recently I got into the Xiang flavor profile of Chinese cooking, and it's spicy, tangy, sweet, garlicky, just the best. And one of the most famous dishes in this flavor profile is Xiang Eggplant, Xiang Qiezi. I absolutely adore this dish, made it many times, and I will share my recipe here. But there's this one thing. All the classic recipes tell me to deep fry my eggplant. And you know, deep frying. So here's the deal. I'm gonna challenge Chinese cuisine because I believe there is a better way. My name is Andong and this is a special experiment style episode where I try to make Xiang eggplant without the deep frying. Just real quick before we get started, if you like recreating mouth-watering dishes from China and the world, you have come to the right place. If you like what you're seeing, please consider subscribing. Okay, now back to that pile of eggplant. I want to try two alternative methods of cooking the eggplant, which is why I'm making so much. So you could go to an Asian grocery store and get Chinese eggplants for this dish, but you know, I find that Western eggplants work just fine. So first of all, I'm gonna cut my eggplant into sort of thick fries. Then I'm gonna toss them in a good amount of salt, cover them, and make sure to add some constant pressure from the top. And you might be asking why? Well, this serves two purposes. A, we're breaking up the cell structure of the eggplant, and B, we're drawing moisture out of it, which both is actually pretty great for the texture of the eggplant. So about 20 minutes later, I got my brined eggplant here. It's nice and wet, which means that it's ready to be cooked. So first, I'm gonna deep fry a third of my eggplant. I mean, this is an experiment, this is science, so we need a control batch. Takes only a couple of minutes in hot oil, and I know my eggplant is done when it's nice and golden. It actually even gets a little bit crispy on the outside. And we will do a taste test in a second, but first, the fun part, how to not deep fry an eggplant. So my first idea was to bake my eggplant in the oven. For that, I am tossing it in just a little bit of oil and then putting it on a wired rack and baking it in the oven for around 20 minutes. The eggplant actually comes out nicely browned and looks really promising. And my second alternative idea is to steam the eggplant. I'm not quite sure about this one because I'm afraid the eggplant will get all soggy from the steam. So I'm adding the eggplant to my steamer and putting that on high heat. And around 10 minutes later, the eggplant does look cooked, but also indeed does look a little bit wet. But it is tasting time. Let's see how big that difference really is. So first I tried the deep fried eggplant. Of course it had great texture, nice and creamy inside, slightly crisp and browned outside, nicely caramelized, just perfect. And the second one was the oven baked eggplant, which was actually quite disappointing. It kind of dried out a bit and was pretty stringy inside, and for some reason it tasted quite bitter. And I hate to say it, but oven baked is out. Last hope, steamed. So this is the steamed eggplant, which indeed looks a little bit slimy and not very promising, but it really surprised me. I mean, obviously there was no browning, no crust, but the overall texture was really good. It was really creamy and smooth without falling apart and actually quite close to the deep fried one. So you know what? Bingo! And now that oven baked is out, let's see how deep fried and steamed eggplant perform in the actual dish. So let's go and make some Xiang Qiezi. We are getting ready to stir fry. So first I'm chopping up my veggies. You can pretty much use any vegetable you want in an Xiang style dish, but crunchy veggies like peppers and carrots tend to work really well. So I'm cutting them into thin slivers, julienne if you like, which is also a pretty classic way to prep your veggies for an Xiang style dish. Next up, I am mincing some aromatics, which is, as always, ginger, spring onion, and our good friend garlic. And finally, I am getting that Xiang sauce ready. I like to use the 1-2-3 rule, which means 1 part cooking wine, 2 parts soy sauce, and then 3 parts dark rice vinegar, and also 3 parts sugar. Lastly, I'm adding a pinch of salt, a pinch of MSG, and a little bit of cornstarch for thickening. Showtime! Hot oil in the wok. Aromatics in. Now we add some Doubanjiang, which is fermented bean and chili paste. And just between us guys, you can add some Sriracha if you don't have Doubanjiang around. Now add in your eggplant, followed by carrots and peppers, and stir fry for about a minute. Finally, add your sauce. It's gonna take around 30 seconds until it thickens and reduces, and then boom! I think that looks like some pretty legit Xiang eggplant. But now, let's see how the steamed eggplant does. I actually decided to change things up a little bit and add another common ingredient to this dish, some minced pork. This is a classic variation of Xiang Eggplant. Add in some cooking wine, a little bit of salt, some white pepper and cornstarch. Mix, 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 and done. So here we go again. Hot oil in the wok. Frying up that pork first until it crisps up. Then removing that aside and adding in the aromatics and that lovely Doubanjiang. Next, carrots, peppers, and stir fry. So I'm adding in my eggplant at this point just because, you know, the steamed one looks a little bit fragile and I'm afraid that it's gonna fall apart. Lastly, I'm adding in that sauce, stir frying a little bit, et voila! How great does that look? And now to that big question we're all dying to get the answer to. Can the steamed eggplant live up to the deep fried eggplant? So first let me tell you that the texture was actually spot on. The slightly browned and crispy edge of the deep fried eggplant actually disappears in the stir fry, so there really wasn't a big difference texture wise. And by the way, that minced pork in the Xiang eggplant, optional but highly recommended. But, and there's a big but, the steamed eggplant did taste a little bit bland. I guess it's just not that good at absorbing all those flavors. And you know what? I was this close to calling this my final verdict until... So I'm adding in my eggplant at this point just because, you know, the steamed one looks a little bit fragile and I'm afraid that it's gonna fall apart. I think this is where I made a big mistake. So let's give this one more shot. From the beginning, hot oil in the wok. Aromatics in, Doubanjiang in, now the eggplant, and we give it a good minute or so to absorb all that flavor. And now we're adding in the veggies, stir frying for a little bit, lastly that sauce, and now, this is a whole other story. Let me tell you that I'm actually super excited. This is just as good as the deep fried version. You don't need to deep fry your eggplant. I said it, I know it's crazy, but you don't. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this video, even though it was a little bit different from what I've done recently. Let me know how I did in the comments, or go and deep fry or steam that like button. Completely up to you. Also, don't forget to head over to my channel for more fun cooking videos, and definitely let me know if you have any food challenges for me. Guys, I see you in the next video. Peace!